Hello, this is Canada Daddy. I'm here with a new corner to tell you about the power of the mind and everything in the world, whether it's in the economic or career field or any other area. When you want to achieve as much as you want, when you want to succeed, how far can our brain help us? There are many sayings here and there that the brain is great. We should utilize the power of the brain, but in everyday life, we don't often have the opportunity to feel this, nor do we get the feeling. When you want to succeed, I will tell you today about the shocking, if not actual cases and research results that help you succeed, the brain. Let's take a look at the powerful and amazing cases of brain plasticity, or neuroplasticity, one by one. Brain plasticity and neuroplasticity are the same thing, but since brain plasticity is shorter, I will unify it as brain plasticity today. First of all, what is brain plasticity? In a word, it's the ability of the brain to change its own wiring in response to external stimuli, environmental changes, and so on. If I tell you straight away, there is underfloor heating, right? There is underfloor heating wiring under the floor. But when the severe cold comes, the underfloor heating wiring laid under the floor changes itself to heat more. Our brain actually does this, which is impossible. This has only been revealed about 20 years ago. The dominant thought in the academic world about the brain was this: a normal brain that has not received any training gradually develops when it is a child, reaches its peak in its 20s and early 30s, and then gradually regresses as it ages. Here comes an important point. It presupposes a normal brain that has not received any training, right? But now the research equipment is developing. Until then, the only way was to dissect and look at the brain when a person died. But now we can scan the brain of a living person. And amazing research results are starting to come out. If you train and manage your brain, the brain wiring expands as much as Yanhangji, and the period to maintain that state is almost unlimited. So we can keep using our brains until we die. And we can achieve the best performance we want. One of the world's top authorities in the field of neuroscience, Dr. Emin, is not the heart, but the brain that is anxious. When I introduced the book to you, I showed you an amazing brain picture. At that time, the doctor was in his 30s, and he was crazy about his body and only researched. So he didn't train his brain at all. On the other hand, the doctor's grandmother consistently managed her brain with a restaurant and study. If you compare the pictures of these two brains, the brain of the elderly grandmother is much cleaner and healthier than that of Dr. Emin, who was in his 30s. This brain picture was also a big issue in academia at the time. Yes, everyone from today, even if it's just a joke. I can't say that I'm getting old and blinking. I can't say that my head is hard because I'm old and I can't do it. Even if I want to because I'm old. Even if your current state is like that, you shouldn't say this. The words we unconsciously spit out are really important. I'll stop talking about this part here today. And let's really feel how powerful this brain is today. First of all, let's take a look at the great cases where you can pull up this brain according to your will. Even if a part of the brain is seriously damaged, there was a young man named Ian. He loved sports from a young age, and he was a really healthy young man who was active as a lacrosse player during his school days. But unfortunately, this young man had a big injury, hitting his head on a rock while traveling with his friends when he was just 20 years old. His life was really ruined. As a result of this accident, Ian suffered a major damage to the central nervous system, and his ability to run around was colorless. And he became a paralytic state where he could not even move his hands on his own. It is said in the data that all areas of the brain responsible for motor nerves were damaged. The doctor said at the time, "You will need the help of a family or caregiver 24 hours a day." Yes, he was crazy. He was a very healthy young man and wanted to achieve his dream of being an athlete. but his life turned into hell. The doctor asked him, "Would you like to implant a chip in your brain? Your brain's motor cortex is dead. This chip will send a signal to move to the wrist instead of the dead motor cortex. If you implant a chip, is that it? Absolutely not. This chip will never automatically make you normal. So you have to implant a chip in your brain and then input visual and auditory signals into your brain while watching a video of writing with your hand hundreds of times, and while trying to move the hand that does not move. You have to repeat and repeat so that the normal brain can replace the role of the dead motor cortex. Then the chip will deliver the collected nerve signals to the wrist. In the end, you have to make an effort." For him, who had hit rock bottom in his life in an instant, the story of sitting still and watching the same video hundreds and thousands of times and practicing was not a hardship. Rather, it was a pleasure like a god. He watched the scene on the screen without sleeping time and tried to move his hand incessantly. Not only that, but because he had to inject the brain's auditory and visual signals, his concentration was also tremendous. He fills up a whopping 1,000 hours. In the morning, the chip in his brain rewarded his efforts and resonated with the brain's signals. And as a result, his hand began to move. Thus, with the healthy part of the brain, and even the ability that the damaged part of the brain had done, he was able to move his hand even after removing the chip. He is now drinking water directly, and is said to be gradually increasing the range of motion in his body. But now, there is a much more pitiful and extreme real story. It's a real case of a child who has been living with half a brain from the beginning. When he was 3 years old, he had seizures so often that his daily life was difficult. The doctor says it's because of a rare chronic inflammation in the brain. There is no way. To save his life, he must expose all the inflammation on his left. Do parents have another choice? After the surgery, the state of the small 3-year-old baby was indescribable. After a few years, the child grew up to the point where he could receive treatment. His parents started to consistently give him physical therapy, rehabilitation therapy, and language therapy. But something strange happened. On the 3rd month, he speaks like a peer, and he starts to control his body on his own. At the time, the medical staff said the remaining right brain instead of the removed left brain quickly takes in visual, auditory, olfactory, and tactile stimuli coming into the body, and makes appropriate judgments to give instructions to the motor environment. After 20 years, he entered college. Yes, everyone, he was admitted to college with only half a brain. While attending college, he worked part-time at a restaurant, answered customers over the phone, smiled brightly, and even received a salary, impressing his parents. There are really many cases where a part of the brain, even if it cannot function at all, or even if half of the brain is missing, we can live with the power of brain plasticity if we have the will. Then here comes this question. Does brain plasticity mean anything to an old brain? Of course. As we saw in the case of Dr. Emmons' grandmother earlier, the brain has nothing to do with age. No, this is not an accurate expression. To be more precise, you can even age backwards. Translate in English assistant. Hello, this is Canada Daddy. I've started a new segment to help you understand the power of the mind, and to share everything about the world, whether it's in the economic or career field, or any other area. When you want to achieve as much as you want, when you want to succeed. How far can our brain help us? There are many sayings here and there that the brain is great. We should utilize the power of the brain. But in everyday life, we don't often have the opportunity to feel this, nor do we get the feeling. When you want to succeed, I will tell you today about the shocking, if not actual cases and research results that help you succeed, the brain. Let's take a look at the powerful and amazing cases of brain plasticity, or neuroplasticity one by one. Brain plasticity and neuroplasticity are the same thing, but since brain plasticity is shorter, I will unify it as brain plasticity today. First of all, what is brain plasticity? In a word, it's the ability of the brain to change its own wiring in response to external stimuli, environmental changes, and so on. If I tell you straight away, there is underfloor heating, right? There is underfloor heating wiring under the floor. But when the severe cold comes, the underfloor heating wiring laid under the floor changes itself to heat more. Our brain actually does this, which is impossible. This has only been revealed about 20 years ago. The dominant thought in the academic world about the brain was this: